This experience happened to me back when I worked at my second job as a manager at a health and fitness center. It was a huge facility that led onto a park behind the building, so it was an ideal location for outdoor activities as well. But creepy when walking through the park at night. It was almost lockup time, and everybody had already left the gym except for a few staff members. I sat at the front desk, watching everyone leave and waiting for staff to finish doing their close-down jobs. I still had to upload some information on the system and send a few emails that night, as I was a bit behind on my jobs from the shift being busy. Eventually, the other remaining staff members had finished their jobs, but seems I had a few things left to do on the computer. I thought I would let the remaining staff go as not to have them waiting around pointlessly for me. Usually, you would have somebody wait with you, but I had locked up plenty of times before, so I wasn't scared and knew it would be easier just to let them go. I would get my work done quicker. So after they had gone, I was alone in the center. I had to check if everything was in order in the facilities before I locked up. As I was the manager on duty, I had to leave it correct for the other manager coming in the next morning. I finished up my work on the computer and rose from my desk, having a look around. Everything was in order, and I was just about set to leave. But as I looked down the corridor, I noticed that a bathroom light was on, which was weird, as the lights were all motion censored in the bathrooms. I walked towards the corridor, and as I stepped near, my ears made out a strange, slight banging sound echoing in the corridor. As I stood in front of the bathroom where I had seen the light, I realized that the sound was coming from the other side of the door. It was much clearer now that I stood at close range. I was scared to go inside, now slightly regretting the decision of letting the other staff go and being alone, but I knew that I had to. As I slightly pushed open the door, the light of the bathroom went completely out. I stood there and looked at the darkness inside, straining my eyes to make out anything unusual. I almost jumped when I did. It was a dark figure, standing in the corner of the opposite end of the bathroom. I thought to myself, who the hell was this? And what were they still doing here? They had to know that the gym was now closed. I went to step inside, and immediately, the light sensors kicked back in, lighting up the room. To my utmost horror, I saw that a man was facing away from me in the corner, facing the walls, banging his head right on the wall in front of him. I remember the tight knot building in my stomach as I mustered up the courage to speak and asked, "Are you okay, sir?" in a frightened voice. This was by far the creepiest thing I had ever seen in my life. "What are you doing here? The center is closed," I said. But as I did, he stopped banging his head at the sound of my voice and stood still without turning towards me. I stepped in closer, but as I did, and I got a better look, I noticed that he had something in his hand. It was a knife, and it was stained, dripping with blood. I froze in horror at the sight of it and gasped in fear. The man began to turn as he let out a harrowing cry. Knowing better than to wait around long enough to be stabbed, I ran outside as fast as my legs would take me, even though they felt like jelly, and as soon as I was outside of the bathroom, luckily, I had my keys on me. I shut the door and locked it to prevent the man from leaving as the door crashed and shuddered with bangs from the other side. I sprinted to the front desk and picked up the phone, dialing 911, telling them the situation, to send help and to hurry. I waited outside the front entrance, scared to stay inside just in case. The police soon arrived and entered the building. They found the man there where I'd left him, locked in the bathroom area. They took the man into custody. It was found that he was actually an escaped patient from a psychiatric hospital located just outside of town. He had been hiding out in the cubicle after he snuck in through a fire exit left open leading from the park. They had found a man stabbed in the park, and the blood on his knife matched that of the victims. I still remember it now, that night, as I watched the police take him away in their car. The look he gave me, with those empty eyes of his, piercing through me as he sat in the back of the car, grinning at me from ear to ear, not blinking or taking his eyes off me once. I will never forget that look. It freaks me out now still. Thinking, what could have happened to me? I could have ended up like the man in the park. Now, I always keep staff around when closing up after that night. I'm a 25-year-old female and I work as a personal trainer. I don't have a massive clientele, but a modest one. And at this point on my coaching journey, I wouldn't say I'm doing too bad for myself. But this incident happened to me 5 months ago and terrified me. It's took me a while to get back to myself and again enjoy what I do. I work at my local gym, that I won't name the company for privacy purposes. One evening I was not working and had no clients booked in, but I decided to take a trip in to train myself as I would do most days anyway. As I made my way in, that's when a colleague came over to me. He was a supervisor of the center, and we'd spoken before on a few occasions, and we got on well. He asked me if I was expecting anyone that night or had any clients booked in. I replied no, and that I was only here to train. That's when he had a puzzled look on his face, as he then told me that a strange-looking man had come up to the desk asking to see me, someone he'd not seen before. Upon being told I wasn't there, the man would then proceed to look around the entire building for me and was asking the other staff where I was. After noticing this, my colleague then asked him, "Why are you looking for her? Was he one of my clients, or does he just want some PT advice?" To which he would reply no to all of the questions, saying he just wants to see me because he liked me and wanted to see me now. Whilst seemingly being annoyed, the man wanted then to know when I was in next. Thankfully, my colleague told him that I wasn't in tonight and couldn't tell the man when I was working next, not wanting to give him any information. The man then walked off and disappeared. After my colleague had described this strange guy, I was pretty sure I didn't know anyone by that description, and what he had just told me kind of freaked me out. Who was this guy that knew me? I thanked him for informing me, and I began to make my way upstairs to the gym. That's when my colleague grabbed me by the arm, stopping me from walking up the stairs as he pointed up to the balcony area, whispering to me that there was the man who had been looking for me. As I look up, the man is looking the opposite direction to me, but I can see and confirm to my colleague I 100% did not know him, nor had I ever seen him before. That's when he began to make his way towards the stairs. My colleague, quick thinking, told me to go and sit in the office behind us until he passed, which I did. I went into the office and took a seat. I couldn't see outside, but that's when I could hear the man had again come over to the front desk to my colleagues. It was then I could hear him demanding to know where I was and for them to tell him when I worked. All the while, my colleague asking him what his name was and why he wanted to see me if it wasn't PT related or if he didn't know me. But the man would become angry and start shouting he didn't understand why they were asking him questions and just to answer him, refusing to give his name. It wasn't important. The next thing freaked me out as the talking stopped, and from my colleague's words, the man just stood there, staring at him, with what he described as frowned, empty eyes and a crazed half-smile etched on his face. He said the type of face you would see on a mental patient. Finally, having enough of this, my colleague told the man he would have to leave due to his attitude and aggressive behavior. I stayed in that office for a few minutes, as a couple of staff members managed to escort him out of the building. The problem with where I worked was it wasn't just a member center. The general public could come in and use the facilities on a pay-as-you-go basis, so it was hard to find out who the hell that guy was if he wasn't down on the system. He may have filled out a form, but there's always so many you wouldn't know who was who. The man had finally been moved on. I felt really creeped out and didn't really want to leave myself, so I stayed and trained for a few hours with the company of another staff member. I waited around until I had calmed down and felt it was safe to leave. It had been a few hours since that creep had left, so I said goodbye to the staff as I left and I made my way to my car. The car park was empty as it was late at this point, and to my annoyance, I couldn't have parked farther away. I power walked over to my car that was in a secluded corner, feeling relieved as, you know, how your thoughts can race sometimes. That is when my thoughts turned into a harrowing reality. From behind me, I heard the sound of running footsteps pounding on the floor. I looked around in horror, screaming as I saw the same man with wild, crazed eyes running at me. I jumped into my car as fast as I could as he lunged at me, managing to lock the doors as he crashed into the side of my car, my heart racing with the most fear I have ever felt. He began to beat at my window, pounding with his hand, all the while smiling at me with his deranged eyes, asking me to come out of the car and talk with him. I don't know what fucked up world he thought I was going to do that in. I tried to start my car as I put it in reverse. He suddenly stops banging and runs off away from the car. I look out my rearview mirror to see 3 of my colleagues running towards my car and chasing after him, but managing to get away. The man vanishes. So shaken up from the event, my colleague rings the police to report the attack on me. I was so afraid to be alone. I stayed at my friend's that night. I was later informed that the suspect was found and apprehended. He had a history of mental health problems from an accident he'd had and was on medication. He was supposed to have a caregiver. It was found that he had stalked previous women before and had been arrested on a previous occasion for the same thing. He explained how he had seen my picture up in the gym on the PT board and had become fixated on meeting me. That's how he knew who I was. To my disappointment, due to his mental health problems and not knowing his actions were wrong, he got off with a warning, and now a carer in place and a ban from ever using the facilities again. Although I feel sorry for him and his condition, it just freaks me out and baffles me knowing that he could quite easily go out there and do the same to another woman again. Just a quick one, guys. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed these disturbing stories. Why don't you comment down below which one would have terrified you the most if it were you in that situation? Also, don't forget to subscribe just over to the left and look out for plenty more upcoming content by hitting that bell button. If you can, like, comment, and share. It really helps us out, and I really appreciate it a lot, you guys. Let us know what story subjects you'd be interested in hearing soon in upcoming videos. And thanks again. Take care out there, and remember, fear lies within.